If you have been training consistently, eating enough protein, sleeping reasonably well, and your muscle growth has still slowed to what feels like almost nothing, then what I'm about to tell you in the next 5 minutes is the single most underrated and least discussed variable in all of hypertrophy science, and it is not a new supplement. It is not a secret training split, and it is not something that requires any additional time in the gym. It is a concept called mechanical tension specificity combined with intentional progressive overload at long muscle lengths. And the reason nobody talks about it is not because it is complicated, but because it is unglamorous. It cannot be sold in a bottle, and it requires you to train with significantly less weight than your ego currently allows, which makes it the most powerful and the most psychologically difficult muscle building tool available to any natural athlete training today. The secret begins with understanding what actually causes a muscle fiber to grow at the cellular level, because most people operate on a vague understanding that lifting weights causes muscle growth without ever going one layer deeper into the mechanism, and that mechanism is mechanotransduction. The process by which mechanical tension applied to a muscle fiber is converted into a biochemical signal that activates satellite cells, upregulates muscle protein synthesis, and ultimately results in the addition of new contractile proteins called actin and myosin to the muscle fiber, making it physically larger and stronger. And the critical insight that the latest research has revealed is that this mechanotransduction signal is not uniform across the range of motion of an exercise. It is dramatically higher when the muscle is under load in its lengthened or stretched position, compared to when it is under load in its shortened or mid-range position. And a series of studies from 2021 through 2023 by researchers including Mayo, Casiano, and Pedrosa, published in peer-reviewed journals including the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, confirmed with remarkable consistency that training at long muscle lengths produced 40 to 60% greater hypertrophy compared to training at short muscle lengths over the same time period with equal volume and load. 40 to 60% more muscle growth from the same number of sets and reps just by changing where in the range of motion the tension is being applied. And if you have been doing half reps, bouncing reps, or choosing exercises that load your muscles at shortened positions because they allow you to use more weight, you have been operating at potentially half the hypertrophic efficiency of what your training could be producing. The practical application of this research requires you to immediately audit every exercise in your program and ask one question. Where is the most tension being applied relative to the muscle's length? For your biceps, it means the bottom of the curl, where the muscle is fully stretched, must be the most controlled, most loaded, most intentional part of the movement, not a position you rush past with momentum on the way up. For your chest, it means the bottom of the press, where the pec is maximally stretched across your ribcage, is where the most growth stimulus exists, not the lockout at the top. For your hamstrings, it means Romanian deadlifts and Nordic curls that load the hamstring in a fully lengthened position are dramatically superior to leg curls performed with the hip flexed, which shortens the hamstring and reduces the stretch-mediated hypertrophic stimulus. For your triceps, it means overhead extensions that fully stretch the long head are producing significantly more long head hypertrophy than pushdowns where the long head is never lengthened. And for your quads, it means deep squats that take your quads through full knee flexion are producing greater vastus lateralis and rectus femoris hypertrophy than partial squats or leg press with limited range of motion. And the unifying principle across all of these is that the exercise or execution style that allows you to use the most weight is almost never the one that loads the target muscle at its longest length, which is why implementing this principle requires the psychological willingness to reduce your working weights, increase your range of motion, and measure your progress in muscle growth rather than in the number on the dumbbell. The second component of this secret is the progressive overload application, specifically at these long muscle length positions, because it is not sufficient to simply achieve a stretched position once and maintain it at the same load indefinitely. Your muscles adapt to the specific tension stimulus they receive, and once they have adapted to a given load at a given muscle length, the hypertrophic signal diminishes dramatically, which is why the combination of long muscle length training with systematic weekly progressive overload is what separates the natural athlete who continues growing month after month from the one who plateaus and concludes they have reached their genetic ceiling when they have actually just reached the ceiling of their current stimulus. Implement a simple rule. Every exercise in your program should have a target rep range of 8 to 12, performed with full range of motion that maximizes the stretch on the target muscle, with a 3-second eccentric to ensure the stretch position is loaded under control rather than passed through with momentum, and when you can complete the top of that rep range with perfect form across all sets, increase the load by the smallest available increment at your next session. This is not a revolutionary concept, it is progressive overload applied with the specificity of long muscle length awareness. But the combination of these two principles applied simultaneously is what the research identifies as the most powerful natural hypertrophic stimulus available. And almost nobody is doing it correctly because almost nobody has taken the time to understand that where the tension is applied within a rep matters as much as how much tension is applied across the set. The muscle building secret that nobody talks about is not a trick, it is not a hack, and it will not work in 2 weeks. It is the disciplined application of loading your muscles at their longest possible lengths with full controlled range of motion and systematic progressive overload applied to those lengthened positions consistently over months. And the reason it remains a secret is not because it is hidden, but because it requires you to train with less weight, more control, more patience, and more self-awareness than the ego-driven, momentum-assisted, partial range training that fills every gym on earth. Commit to it for 12 weeks, and the difference in your muscle development will tell you everything you need to know about why this was the variable that was missing the entire time.